You have a couple of Capablanca games showing his endgame technique starting from the opening, going into the endgame. So Soman talks about that too, imbalances that last throughout the game. So it's really useful to understand beyond just, I'm good at the end game once the end game arises. Well, that's not how it works, right? You have to ideally create those imbalances, or at least understand them. If your opponent maybe just creates them, they're just there, right? But you have to know, what do I do with them? And when do I shift into an end game? When do I transition? And always keep in mind, should I go into a king and pawn end game? You're looking deeper and deeper, different types of end games you want to achieve based on, of course, the pawn structure. So we arrive, okay, so we have Tarrasch defense, right? Tarrasch, whatever it is. Okay, so d5, c5, takes. Now, basically what happens there is we have an immediate target on d5. That's pretty much what white's going for. And black is like, okay, I'll take on the target on d5, not guarded by any pawns, but I'm getting activity. That's the trade-off. Yeah, typically this is kind of the more modern approach, the bishop g2 rather than e3 and bishop out to the middle. So the bishop will just aim at d5. So Capablanca guards that, very common handling of the Tarrasch defense. So pretty modern, really. 9f6, not super popular, but it's still a good opening. Now this is interesting. This reminds me of a Lasker variation. Lasker does this too against the Queen's Gambit. You bring that knight in, you trade down, and it's interesting how quickly we're going to see liquidation, just immediately. So of course he anticipates the shift in structure. Now you'd have to think, all right, what happens if the knight takes? Well, if the knight takes knight, we can already see that knight's going to have to move from f3. At the very least, we're going to pick up the d pawn, right? Let's just look at that quickly. We can't even go to g5. Okay, let's analyze this really quickly. What if knight to d2? And this is the international duel class, by the way. So what do you guys think? Let's discuss. Knight to d2. Your e pawn's hanging. The d pawn's hanging. What would you guys do here to deal with this tension?
Probably just swipe the move. So just take the pawn.
I think I agree. Yeah. Sometimes people would cough up the e pawn and double the pawns, but it doesn't probably make it's actually kind of interesting. But if you get the pawn back, you kind of damage their structure. You could probably play f5 and support your opponent and say, all right, the onus is on you. What are you going to do with your d pawn? But I think probably he'd just snatch the pawn and keep developing. But f5 is certainly interesting. But I think you're going to take rook c1 is going to come. So probably a knight invasion. And then just get your king out of there. And black is doing very well. I think black has a nice result out of the opening, really well-placed knight, rook's coming. Or if they go e3, we can, that's actually going to see that's kind of very similar to what we're going to see in the game. So you obviously have to know what's going to happen there with that line. The other line, well, he follows suit. He just copies them. He said, okay, you come in, so do I. We both hop in with our knights, a lot of tension. So imagine, like, this is one of the elements of mastery. To look at a position like this and determine, okay, when I go 94, I'm not calculating necessarily for tactics. I don't know if probably we're not dealing with pawns being won. We're just dealing with a shift. Look at this. We have shift of d5. Now that the quote weak d5 pawn becomes pretty aggressive on e4 if it takes back, like in the line we looked at. Now we're going to look at that. We have to look at this shift as well as the other shift we talked about. This shifting of the pawn structure, transformation rather. So e3 happens. You got to look at that too. I mean, a lot of it's just self-explanatory. I mean, you took his pawn, they take your pawn. And then, if they take back, then you just castle. Again, rook d8 is always there. Go rook d8, threaten to unleash your rook on the queen, the discovery. So yeah, pretty much, it's pretty straightforward. You can kind of intuitively do it, but it's good if you look at a few lines. But so, like I said, we're really quickly transitioning into an endgame. Okay, so we're in a late middle game already. We're starting to see we're trading off another piece, getting closer to an endgame, just heavy pieces and a bishop each. So you see with e3, now he knows he's going to give up the e pawn no matter what. If you retreat, he's going to take. So he kind of does so with tempo, and he wants to trade. I mean, if he really wants to keep the knight on the board, he probably could have gone knight f5. Knight c6 just is kind of ugly, right? Do we like this? Probably not, right? Why take on voluntary weaknesses? I remind myself one of my notes before every game that I play in a tournament is one of the notes is don't make voluntarily moves if you don't need to. Don't voluntarily rather make weakening moves if you don't need to. I mean, because I've learned my lesson there. So just let's say the default is to be solid, but only get loose when it makes sense, right? That makes more sense in a blitz game, but you might not get away with that in a quick game. So just got to make sure. So there's no need for that. So he said, all right, well, I keep going forward, and then it's going to be my move now. Now, interestingly, well, we have a little bit, well, this is pretty obvious tactics, pretty straightforward tactics there, but you'd have to make the positional assessment into, okay, we're definitely going into an endgame if the queen takes. So what would happen if the queen were to take? That's a sideline that he has to know. Very direct tactic. What would it be?
I think it would be queen takes on black queen takes on b7. Then after bishop recaptures, you would move the a rook to b8, attacking the bishop, and then after the bishop moves, you just take the pawn on b2.
Right. Let's say maybe bishop f3 sensible. Let the king come up, cover d1. You take here. Now you're threatening the a pawn. Now we do have to assess and say, all right, we have a passed pawn. It is isolated, but you can start shoving that down the board, be guarded by the bishop. The a pawn's hanging. So if they move it, well, keep in mind also, look, I mean, just look at the piece placement. It's great piece placement. So we have a rook we already have a rook on their second rank. They don't have any rooks out. I would maybe just consider doubling. And then if they bother us, maybe shove the pawn. I don't know. We'd have to verify that, but you could probably even do something like this. That looks really dominant. Oh, he can't even do that. I blundered. I blundered in my analysis. Can't go there. So that's even better. Yeah, and black is clear. So point is white can't even look at the pawn. But if he does, you have stuff like that. You can double on the second. Actually, you're threatening rook d2 soon to double. Watch out for your back rank. You probably play g6. Not let the bishop, not h6 usually, because you don't want the bishop to look at your left. Or luft, go g6. So the bishop can't take away your escape square for your king, your heir, and then you just dominate. So we're pretty happy with that as well. But we have to, it's not, we see, like I said, it's tactical. It's a pretty straightforward tactic, right? Very basic tactic of we trade queens. We have basically a skewer. We rook b8, it's a skewer that gets your pawn back because the piece in front has to move. And then you snatch the b pawn. So it's a skewer that gets a pawn back, gives you a passed pawn, gives you dominant position. So yeah, we get it. We don't lose a pawn. We get it, but what's the evaluation? That's very important. That's again another element of mastery. So we have transformation of pawn structure, understanding these trades, which are critical positions, understanding as we're getting deeper and deeper into endgame. So you're seeing it, what kind of endgame you're going to get, and you're seeing how good the piece placement. You're seeing how good that c pawn is going to be for you. No matter what, you have those dynamics, just like the d5 pawn earlier, just like the quote weak d5 pawn, but you have dynamics. So therefore, white does pretty wise move, probably rook fc1, looks at the pawn, doesn't commit, and then Capablanca is like, well, now I want to cover, and it's actually part of his plan. So here we are. Let's analyze this position. So now we're in a transitional phase, getting close to an endgame, right? I guess late middle game, but we're really preparing for an endgame. One more trade, we're really getting there. So what's going on? Let's look at, there are very few imbalances here, but by understanding the imbalances, we'll know how to proceed. So let's break it down. I'll note it down on the side. Just any imbalances that you guys see. What are they? Any differences, components of the position, differences between your and your opponent's position.
On the queen side, we have black has 3 pawns and white has 2.
Yeah, exactly. So the queen, let's say queen side, we call that, what do we call that? 3 versus 2 or anything 2 versus 1. When you have more than, what do we call it?
It's a pawn majority.
Right. So we could say queen side. Yeah, queen side pawn majority. It's just kind of know it's majority, right? You say queen side majority. And then what, well, versus king side. It's like called like central, but technically we call it, because white has the extra central pawn. We pretty much would call that a king side. King side for white. Say majority. That's the main imbalance, really. Anything else? Maybe like some nuances, piece placement, king safety. Very little, but what do you notice in terms of king safety? Still something to think about.
Yeah, the white king is kind of not that safe.
Why would you say that?
Well, because you got the open D file and you got the queen that, I mean the bishop that can bear down on him, and then you got the rook. You can get on the open D file. You got your queen.
So I would say that that's like a prospect, like maybe a far off prospect, but
Yeah,
but it's kind of there.
not immediate, but
Right.
something
I would say
build
no.
up.
I would maybe I would add maybe if you like, if you take away the G, okay, let's say white had a D2 bishop and not a G2, then we're really seeing it more concretely. Now you'd want, maybe if you trade off a bishop, so something, probably something would happen with the bishops, and then I would, yeah, then I would feed into your comment, you know what I mean? So if you get rid of their G2 bishop, then you start coming in with your bishop, or you shove your you have the prospect of shoving your H pawn. So certainly you have the prospect in a little
I mean,
while.
it's something you have to build up to.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
I'm
It's
just
there.
looking
It
at the
might be there.
open deep file, and then the king is over there. Yes, he has some protection, but you know, we have some challenges too.
All right, now looking at our side, well, yeah, and again, like we just have to get there. We have to like take the D file, which we'll try and do because they are. That's actually that's another point. Not beyond king safety. I think the second point is especially salient that you talk about the D file. So we'll get there. You're foreshadowing that. But I would say, just to add, I would say though the bishop on G2 and the 4 pawns, you can see it actually does fortify White's king. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah.
It's hard to get there, right? Again, some amendment we might get there, but also there is a problem with Black's king side. What's that? But yeah, that's good. It leads to good, what you said, good food for thought, right? Makes you really think about that. Black side, what's going on with our king?
I'm not sure if it's a weakness per se, but the pawns and adjacent to the king are in the starting position. So while they cover the light and the dark, there's not. I don't know. There's a technical term for this, but there's not like an escape hatch or an escape square if the rooks start getting could theoretically start getting
For
moved. So,
Black, you're saying Black
yes,
doesn't have one?
yes.
Yeah, and again for White would be, again, in the absence of the bishop, you'd have to get like bishop H3. Then you'd see something similar where you have like the back rank mate and they can't cover F1 because bishop's on H3, this kind of thing, right? But we're not there yet. Just like we're not taking advantage, they're not taking advantage of this. But is it a prospect? See, the D file's a prospect. This stuff might be a prospect in the future, but certainly this is a pretty concrete prospect. There's no Luft, right? You have to play that. Again, I would recommend G6 when you're playing as light square bishop. You see, that's just a little tip. Because if you now imagine they have the dark squared bishop, then you would play H6, because then their bishop would come in if you play G6. So you want to basically do it the same color as their bishop. So you have so you keep you don't have like like a de facto, because then you don't truly have, it's like a de facto back rank mate scenario, right? If they have a bishop looking here and you play H6, you see what I mean? And if you play G6, they could play bishop H6 or bishop C3. So you want to make sure on the same colors as the bishops, they can't take away your left. But basically, you would play like yeah, G6 and king. Sometimes you'll see GMs do like little prophylaxis, like they start bringing their king up a little bit, get ready for the end game once they trade off queens. Yeah, so there's that. There's no, so there's no left. What are we calling it? I think Luft, like Lufthansa, right?
Loof, loof.
I guess it doesn't really matter. Well, I guess we'd have to ask a German speaker. Do you guys know? Leia, you're good at languages. I'm guessing Luft. I think that's what I've heard. I guess
Heard both ways.
we'll anglicize it, I guess.
Is there are there umlauts? Let me see.
Maybe.
If see, there are no umlauts, so it would be Lufthansa.
Like
or,
Lufthansa, there'll be Luft, same pronunciation.
like if there were umlauts, it would be more like Lufthansa, which is not really a sound that exists in English.
Kind of like, yeah, I kind of sucking it, like sucking your word a little bit in English. Okay, so anyway, but yeah, the Luft is important. The Luft is important, rather. 4 versus 3 on the king side, 3 against 2 on the queen side for Black. So those are our main imbalances. And again, Lynn mentioned the D file. Interestingly, yeah, that could affect could affect both sides of the board, because if you're playing on the king side, you can attack on the second rank, and same with the queen side. And actually, interestingly though, it's going to play into the majority. So okay, so I think we're pretty good analysis now. Obviously, while we both have like kind of 3 pieces out, the rook on b8 doesn't do anything, but of course it's one of those mysterious rook moves, but we can back up, bolster the b5 pawn. And actually we are guarding c5, so we can start pushing our pawns. We should push your majority and try to create what? Ultimately, ideally.
Should create a pass pawn.
Yeah, that's ultimately what you want. If we could win the B pawn, we'd be happy. But just pushing C, B, C3. Sometimes you squeeze them with B3. But usually, I mean, fundamentally, let's say you trade everything off. Again, king and pawn endgame. If the king, the benefit of the queen side majority when the kings are on the king side, maybe you guys have heard of this about how it could benefit the person with the queen side majority. This is very important in terms of, again, endgame planning. So the kings are on the king side. They're trying to make a pass pawn in the center, but you're there. They're not here. Their king is on, let's say, G1 or even F1. If you have time, or you can create a one, you can just get a queen when they trade. Two, you can create a decoy pawn. So they're busy over here on like whatever, wherever your pass pawn is, B2, C2 on the B or C file. Then in the meantime, you're starting to etch your way in over here, and you're trying to, oh, look at those weak squares. See? So Lynn, the things you're talking about there, they might be a quote kingside attack in an endgame. Right, the kingside attack in that case is to destroy their kingside pawns, or to usher and or usher in your pawns. But basically, you're going to have to destroy theirs because they have 4 against 3. So you win 1 or 2, just win them all. But get there first. I mean, but keep in mind there are obviously always exceptions. You have a queenside majority. What if the king gets to come in and pick them off? Right? Well, it's the exact same thing. They have a kingside majority. We're going to pick them up. But remember, the kings begin on the king side. Therefore, the opposite side. The person who has the majority on the opposite side of the kings, it should benefit them, all else being equal, because that's like the theory there. So yeah, we're gonna see some of that.
Yeah, I'm looking at a triple barrier on the D file with the queen and the 2 rooks, and you got well, the white queen is protecting D8, but I'm just looking at that as a possibility
For black or for white?
for black.
Yeah, but now that feeds into the idea of a queenside majority. Okay, so we have a pretty good understanding. Let's eliminate all those drawings. Pretty good understanding what's going on by just looking at the differences between the 2 sides. In other words, the elements of the position or components. So now let's see what he does. See the great maestro, endgame maestro Capablanca. Okay, so queen e4, pinning the bishop. All right, queen c7. Looks kind of funny actually, right? But he knows that that's not substantial, the pin. b4 is met by c4. He wants to shove the c pawn down. Okay, very sensible, very sensible. Wants to double up on it. A3 slows him down. Now, just because you want to push a c pawn doesn't mean you can't push your b pawn too. Sometimes you get even b3 and you have like those things where you go c5, c4, c3 and like chip at the, like do a breakthrough sacrifice. Like, again, this is all, it's not there yet, but remember, they're all prospects for the future. Okay, here you go. So you got c4 it. Now we can do a5, b4. That's what he does. So you're anchoring in. You have a lot of support for your c pawn. So even if you go a5, b4, you start smothering the rook. You get an avalanche, but your c pawn is going to be guarded by 2 pieces, or maybe rook fc8 and 3. Let's see if he makes a luft as well. That'll be interesting to see. Bishop f3 creates a layer for his own king. There you go. See, there it is. Now keep in mind, as white's getting preoccupied with the queen side, they have abandoned their ability to challenge the file. You can't go rook d3. So you're starting to see the smothering effect, the space gaining effect of the pawn in their territory, closer to promoting than them. Kings are farther away, so it benefits black in general. And we have the d file. Now the d file is going to help our queenside attack. It's very important. It's actually noted somewhere in this game. Okay, fine. So we only get 1 rook. That's actually, simplification might actually help us because it boils down. There it is. There it is. See, Capablanca does everything.
Yes, he does.
So he's got the c pawn coming down. Everything's now. You might say, "Oh, it's a quote bad bishop on e6." Doesn't matter because it's not blocked by the d pawn. He was happy doing d takes e4. That opened up his bishop, has freedom in both directions. But remember, a5, b4. That bishop's just bolstering your queen side. Once you get c3 and you got bishop a2 or something, bishop b3, get in there somewhere. Your bishop's not going to be blocked forever. So if you want to move it, you can. So g6, good move. Maybe you go bishop f5 sometimes too, but no back rank made problems. As I said, not h6, g6. King could come up, no threats of checks. Now, interestingly, he does not trade. There's probably a tactical reason there, or you'd have to look at it very concretely because obviously he had to consider this carefully. Because if you think just like he traded the rooks, that should benefit him. But why don't you trade the queens? Because if you think you're winning, of course you would. So the question is, all right, what do we do about this? This is hanging. So let's say, for instance, maybe a6 is met by a4 or something. No, they have b4. What do you guys think? Rook b8 goes away from the file. You can still go a5, b4. I guess he just, well, let's see. Let's look at the at the pros of just having the, maybe there aren't a ton of cons, we'll look at that, but maybe it's just wait, go back. Maybe it's just the pros of having the queens on the board. Let's see. Let's compare that. Oh, he does trade queens. Interesting. So he does it though. Maybe he times it out. So when yeah, that's brilliant. He does that a lot. So we know he kind of senses, okay, he might do this. He wants to trade, tries to draw. Yeah, he won't, but he's trying. So when you take now, there's no threat on the B pawn. So it's an improved situation.
Wow.
Now it's black's move. Boom, boom, boom. No counterplay whatsoever. Brilliant, right? So it's probably a slight improvement. It just makes your life easier. Now, yeah, it's gained a tap. Another question is, well, look, this is still guarded. What if white had not traded queens? You got to ask that kind of counterfactual kind of. I mean, then you just have beautiful placement. You can still go A5, B4 though, because you're guarding B5, right? You still have A5. So clearly that, what do we want? We want to shove our pawn to B4, which allows us to get fluid pawns, steamrolling, avalanching, whatever you want to call it. Some of my students call it, some of my younger students call it avalanche, pawnalanche. You're doing, I like that term. You're doing a pawnalanche over here, and you're hitting B2 when the rook moves. You can check, you can't check yet, but you can come in D2 probably. Yeah, so you got lots of good stuff coming. Takes. That'll allow you to check. Funny enough, you actually could check him here because the bishop couldn't take, but he wasn't getting too fancy. He just check, king up. Here it comes. So naturally, he's like, well, look, you can play rook D2, so I'm going to cover, but he has this prepared. So, but again, remember, we did all this planning. So this endgame didn't just arise out of nowhere, right? So it didn't fall from a pawn tree, I guess. So A5, B4, takes, bishop F3, but it's all about, yeah, all about that context. Okay, rook B1. So now it's funny. It really reminds me of another famous game against Lasker when he won the world championship, actually. So he's working behind the scenes with the rook. But this is nearly winning. It's probably a win already, but you can already see the win. The win is almost here. It's really tied down, but you got to show the technique. So again, it's all about the lead up too. So B3, rook D2. Okay, what's going on now? So interestingly, like I said, he's not going with C3. Well, maybe it's just not feasible to play C3 yet. So he goes B3, which seems counterintuitive. But the problem for Marshall is he can't go rook C3 because then it's done. He just takes B2, two connected pass pawns, tempo on the bishop, game over. So he goes rook D2. I think this is where, let me double check. I think this is where he does something pretty nice. Let me see. I think it's a this move.
He probably pushes to C3.
Yeah, interestingly, I was thinking, didn't recall the move order. I was thinking maybe he'd do it now. Again, maybe move order can be shifted, but he actually just calmly goes rook C1 and plays it. He doesn't even sacrifice. He's like, I don't need to. Oh, by the way, we might have rook C2. See that? That's a threat. Rook C2 actually, that's tough to me.
That gives him a queen and almost immediately.
Yeah, and if he moves away, you take the bishop. I guess he could check, but you still got that lateral pressure. So bishop D1. Now C3. But now you've got B2 in the air. Yeah, so he does ultimately like do at least a pseudo sacrifice with C3, but he also did so with coming with, again, tempo, threat of rook C2, and you just pick off the bishop. He had to make sure that he could still win that. I mean, it's going to be, so again, anticipating the type of endgame you're going to get deeper into the endgame, we're going to get rook bishop against rook, but you see he has to part with the bishop, right? Bishop C2, well, the only other move, that doesn't work. Why does bishop C2 fail?
Because the rook would just take him.
Mm-hmm.
The rook would take him.
Lynn, once again, you've seen it all. Nice job. You've seen all the tactics. Rook just takes it, removes the defender from B1. So bishop C2, just snatch it, remove the defender. So rook has to take to stop the queen. And then you're winning. But still, I mean, you only have 3 pawns. If you have like 2 pawns especially, or 1 pawn, that's like looking really hard to win. Because rook bishop against rook is a draw. So the more pawns you trade down, the closer you get to that draw. But he plays it beautifully. Okay, why not? Let's get a tempo. Come behind. Just nice and clean technique. It's not going to be a problem for check. So if you block F3, the rook checks and takes the F pawn anyway. And now we have actually a mating net. Nice
Mhm.
weaves and net.
Mhm.
Okay, tempo. There it is. So he provokes. Now f4 is usually a problem here when the rook's on the second because it doesn't win the pawns, but it takes away the king's squares whenever you play f4. So h5. Now we have the bishop check coming. Well, if you have
Mhm.
to take away g5, we have mating prospects if you could take away g5 or lure him in more. But imagine you have like, yeah, or king up or something. But imagine you have f6, then it's going to be bishop check and rook mate, right? So he tries to, he's fighting back. G4 to stop the mate. Take, take, take. Still in the mating net though. He's trying his best, but check. So the question is, why doesn't it go back? Oh, that's really nice because the bishop covers here, so you're actually able to bring your king up and mate him. You create the mating net without getting chased away. See?
Right.
Almost as no, not quite. There, he's trying to get stalemate, but you leave his c pawn there. Don't have to worry about stalemates. So king back. Still not a mate yet, but we're doing very well. Check. Oh, he walks back into the line into danger. Oh, again, he's probably trying to get a stalemate, but it's not going to work. There, yeah, see there. Now he's actually allowing a check, but this time you go to f6 or h6. There's no more check after that. See the bishop. That's the power of your bishop. So now we just have a clean extra bishop, and everything's going to fall. Like he can't hold on to the f pawn, but he's probably out. You just need to weave your bishop in. You got the pawns, the king, the bishop. He'll find a way in. There it is. It's already there. See? Well, he does have a check. We just come the other way, right?
Mm.
Now we have, okay, what does he do? Oh, he resigns. So there's no way, okay, after the rook check, king h6, we have an easy checkmate on h3.
Mhm.
But what if he were to do, what else would there be? Not much else. But the immediate checkmate, actually you have rook h3 check, and then rook h5 mate. See, let's say he does this. Yeah, you could go king h6 and mate, but this is check and mate, right?
Mhm.
So pretty nice, huh? So what do you guys learn from that game? What do you take away from that?
Oh, you have to build up. You have to build up to get to that checkmate.
Coming from the middle game, going all the way back from the middle game,
Uh, Probably
or
from
from
the
which one?
beginning. You know, when you first step out there, you got to have a plan, and once you get to the middle game, have a further plan that's brought on by the first plan.
It's yeah, there are
Sound like I'm talking in circles.
multiple phases, not just opening, middle game, end game. We have, it's like Ralston says in the 7 Deadly Chessons, there's really multiple games within a game.
Yeah.
There's like 3 different phases of the middle game. There's a few different, we have the early mid, we have, like I said, like late middle game. We had kind of this is, I'd say, the transitional phase, like 3 pieces. Trade queens, now there's no doubt we're in an end game now, right? Now we're deep in the end, getting deep into the end game. And then we have our technical phase. Now, interestingly, in Capablanca's hands, once you trade queen, that's a win. This is just a straight up just a win. In less capable hands, maybe white saves the game. Who knows? Right. But notice the restriction. Anytime you see good endgame play, that's why Capablanca in particular, you always see him restraining his opponent. Now, there's the D file, C4, D file control. White was only able to challenge it once, took the D file, didn't let rook D3 happen. So a lot of it, like I said, there's that D file, which
and those pawns too.
in conjunction.
The pawns have roof restriction as well over there, and the B.
In conjunction, right?
Yeah, so it's all a teamwork.
Yeah, good teamwork, pawn play and piece play. Yeah, working in tandem. So yeah, there's that. And really, but it's interesting how quickly you saw the transformation. And notice though, right away. So currently, we don't have the majority yet. I mean, the thing is, if black wants the majority, he's going to play c4 to get through. But you probably don't want to play c4 because then you get queenside majority, but then white gets all that central play. So he's able to create the majority while eliminating the center. So he's dealing with center and queenside, and he determines that his queenside play is better than white's kingside play. And we know there's no attack. There's like end game prospects of problems on the back rank, so he plays g6. Prophylactic move. And then you have the fine prophylactic move g6, then the finesse. not taking here. He has a lot of games like that. Because you know what he's doing. Kind of see, oh, he's going to shuffle, but you make sure that shuffle benefits you. And then, yeah, then the rest is just a forced win, basically. I think once you play this, there's nothing to do about it because you threaten rook c2, he tries to stop you. Rook check, you come up, you're still going to go rook c2. And then you have the pass pawn tactics. Promotion to, okay. So the other one, this is actually, oh, speaking of which, here's the Lasker game. So Havana Nights. This one was played in Havana. A lot of times they'll have it like in multiple locations. I'm not sure if this was only in Havana. 1921. So this is when he became champion. That's actually, yeah, that's the game I'm referring to. Critical game in the match. So yeah, so we there once again isolated D pawn. Last time the person with the isolated pawn lost. This time with the isolated pawn won. This time they lose, but Capablanca is always on the winning side of it. Now, interestingly, he makes this transformation. Okay, bishop comes out again, transformation of structure. So takes. Okay, so trades bishops. Usually if you're playing against the Isolani, it's good to trade on pieces. You can pile up on it with your heavy pieces and don't take away their attacking prospects from all that activity. See all white's activity, especially with that bishop. What if you get a battery on h7, take f6? So we want to trade down the minor pieces. So that's the prescription. It's following that to a T. Now this is really interesting. Bishops, I've seen this a couple times. It's a really nice idea. So you take on a weak looking pawn on c6. So it's kind of, pretty much canceling out. You both have a weak pawn. His is maybe more accessible. But then what you do is you stick your knight, get your pieces out, all well placed, well coordinated, pretty much equal. Both sides are doing pretty well here. Obviously, it's Lasker, super good. But then you start seeing Capablanca getting an edge. Now that's really where it is. It's rook d5. What he's going to do though is just going to double up on it. And you see this is directed against knight f4. So you don't have time for knight f4 because then he drops the d pawn. So then the rook, I don't know if that was a good move. The rook decides to take. If he doesn't take, you're going to double up. Maybe even hit him with c5. So Capablanca hasn't worked out though. That's the thing. You can always hit him with c5 or double. Yeah, you double, you pin the pawn, you go c5. So he's working out so that even though c6 looks weak, he can deal with it. But now suddenly you can see the strength. So we don't have a isolated pawn to attack on the half open file anymore. So it's not quite as accessible. But you still have the isolated pawn versus your beautiful pawn structure and the majority. So again, any other imbalances? I just mentioned a couple of them. Any other imbalances you guys note here? So we have the isolated D pawn, not on a half open file, but what else has been created?
Well, the king again, the white king is I know he has the pawn sitting there, but a person like Capablanca can break through that, and the king's safety is not that great.
White's king?
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at the Luft, right? Once again,
He doesn't have a Luft yet.
This time black has the Luft and white doesn't.
Right.
So Capablanca fixed it last time. He fixed it this time. It's the H pawn. But see, there's no more bishop to keep the. That's pretty important. Now there's no more bishop to. The queen is there, but queen
yeah.
So queen moves away. So now we have a nice Luft. We have beautiful pawn structure. We have 2 pawn islands. Notice that they have 3 pawn islands. Tends to be more solid, right? To have fewer pawn islands. Anything else you guys note about the position? Any observations?
Well, the A2 pawn is weak.
It's loose.
It's loose,
I mean,
but
they could
it
go
has no protection at all, really.
Right. It's loose. It's unguarded. They could go. So it's tactically kind of weak. Permanent weakness. Well, they're both going to have problems. You can play A3, then B pawn guards the A pawn, but then the B pawn's a target. If the B pawn moves, now the A pawn's weak. See?
Yeah.
You can't have it all. There's going to be a weakness. And then obviously D4. Look at that. He's training his sights on the D4 pawn. You have knight F5, knight C6, rook C4. So it's interesting. And there you go again, the open file. He owns the open file, right? So, and he's going to keep his rook. It never gets challenged. He gets to keep it for a long time. So
yeah, because he only has one of them.
Yeah, he doesn't even get to trade though. Well, could he have done? Let me see. What was it? Oh, it's black's move though. See, he knows that, right? He knows that Lasker would love to trade. If you go G4, you start seeing the knight coming in and trying to fork him and stuff. But he knows he wants to challenge it. But now it doesn't work. So what does he do? He goes B3, dealing with the pressure on the B file. But now rook c1, you just pick off. Yeah. And you can see if he hadn't played h6, then he would get mated. But because we have our Luft there. See, that's the thing about the Luft. It's a very important point. You don't, now there might not be a mate anytime soon, but it affects the lines you want.
No,
to
this is good right here.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll affect your lines though. Like this line is only possible here. And probably black's winning this position. This line, and now white goes here, like, okay, whatever. I just go up. You check me again. Okay, I block. Maybe with the queen now, I block here. And now white has to worry about back rank mate, right?
Right.
And then black's just up a clean pawn. Right now we have a massive central. I would call that a central majority. I mean, a huge pawn, huge massive pawns. But you got those. I mean, you already have a passed pawn protected. Yeah, queen's in the way, right? But still, I call it passed pawn, right? D pawn. Yeah. So you can see though, the thing about the Luft is, yeah, you might not get mated at all. There may not even be a mating threat, but it's in those. The problem of the back rank gets embedded in certain lines. You just don't know what's going to happen. There's so many possibilities, but those possibilities will arise sometimes, just like in that line, where you become like tied down to the back rank, and that restricts you, so you can't do other things that you want to do, such as win the D pawn. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And the tactical possibilities to arise. Again, they may not come to pass, but the fact that the possibilities are there, it's like putting pressure on your opponent. You put pressure on them, doesn't mean you're going to win a pawn, for example, but it gives you better pieces, ties the pieces down. So usually superior structure leads to superior pieces if you handle it well. So a lot of ideas that you can extract from a lot of lessons from this game. So b3. Now that's interesting. Again, well, interestingly, it's like restriction in order to maximize its forces. So g4 might happen, right? Okay, you have knight h4 to fork him, but he can deal with the fork. It's kind of annoying for white, but he might go g4. And then you'd have to move that beautiful knight from f5. Remember, beautiful central pawns, nice two pawn islands. Now we're going to get to one final idea. We have the C file control. We have the central pawn majority, tight structure. We have a Luft, they don't. So safer king. We have a better knight. And you make it we call that it's artificial. Phil Silman, I think he called it artificial support point. So this is not an outpost. Get chased away with g4. Now, technically, g4 can be played in the future, like h3, g4. But they go h3, you go h4. There you go. Still an artificial support point because g4 is met by pawn takes pawn en passant. And if they want to do that, this is actually kind of telegraphing what's to come. But yeah, this is going to be softening whites. So in other words, you impose a cost on Lasker if he wants to chase the knight. You make it harder, and therefore you maintain pressure, which ties him down. So you really see these fundamental concepts just demonstrated beautifully in this game. So h5, h3, h4. So now it's de facto no g4 because of en passant. Well, it's not like f3's in there, otherwise it would be rigid. You can take back, but you'll see what happens. It's softening. So we have so many, see these imbalances are really starting to favor us now. We have a space advantage on the king side. Great outpost tonight. I mean, again, quote, artificial support point, but a support point nonetheless. Pressure on the D pawn that's isolated. Not on a half of a D file, but still isolated. And final thing, again, majorities. So we kind of have that, I would call it a central, I mean, I guess some people call it a king side. I would call it a central majority, 2 against 1 in the middle, right? And then we have, it's kind of branching out from the king side. And then we have 2 against 1 on the queen side. Now is where we get to another idea. So it's interesting in the contrast. And Lynn, I know you got to go soon, right?
Yeah.
So this one concept is very important. So in contrast to the other game where he said, queenside majority, that's a good thing. Of course, there are exceptions. So 3 against 2, make a passed pawn. That's what happened, right? Whereas here we have 2 against 1. So you figure, oh, good thing for white. He makes the passed pawn. Well, we call that the minority. Have you guys heard minority attack? I suppose the other one's majority attack or creating passed pawn. This is called minority attack. Have you guys heard of that?
No.
Yes.
So there it is. Yeah, you batter them. You use your minority against the majority to smash it. And then basically you turn the majority into a weakling. Basically becomes, so the strong, well, as you said, A3 was weak, but A2 was weak. Now they play B3. They're trying to keep it strong. Keep in mind, though, B3 opened up some squares for you. But now you batter them with A5, A4. You get a battering ram. We would love their king to be behind it, too. You can often do that. But here there's no king. We're doing queenside attack.
So is that the minority attack with the
Yeah,
A?
that's a minority attack right there.
Okay.
You can do it in different ways, but sometimes it's with the B pawn. Often it was with a B pawn with white. A3, B4 to play B5. This time it's with an A pawn. But whatever it is, 2 against 3, 1 against 2, you just use it to smash the pawn. And then as you see, now we trade queens, timely trade, and there's your 2 targets. Plus so he's playing okay, and then Lynn, I'll send you, how about this? I'll send you a link to this game. But also let's see here.
What time is it?
It's 57, so you gotta run.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you want to just open the link, that's the game, and then I'll post it.
Okay, great.
All right, thanks for
Thank
coming,
you.
and see you whenever you can, see you for whenever,
Thank-
however long you
Thank,
make it.
thank. I could probably do Mondays, but I'm gonna always have to leave a little
Yeah,
early.
no, as long as it works for you, if you can make it, that's great.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right, take
Goodbye,
care.
everybody.
Nice job. So anyway, I just fast forwarded to show her that. But you can see it's a lot of positional chess is about the accumulation of, well, accumulating your opponent, well, either assets for you or deficits for your opponent, right? So we're accumulating weaknesses in white's camp. So, and assets for us. Their weaknesses are our strength, right? But we have the d4 pawn to attack. Their strength of the 2 against 1, we turn that into a weakness. And we also, well, we have the f5 knight, putting pressure on their weakness, but just being strong in its own right. And we have h5, h4, which is just a squeezing method. It's squeezing them. It could lead to kingside attacks, especially with more pieces on the board. You'll see that like in a Caro-Kann where white plays h4, h5, and tries to, cripple the kingside structure. But also the cramping effect will be felt in endgame. So for example, the g2, if they want to play g4, we take on g3, we split the pawns more. You'll see that. But also they're kind of cramped. So let's say again, king and pawn endgame. What if you get your king in there? Then you try to win the g pawn, and also because you're advanced, you're closer to queening. So that timing is important, as the fact that you're ahead of them in that pawn race sometimes. So the cramping effect is very useful, as long as you don't lose the pawn in an untimely way. Sometimes you'll sack it, but okay. So we're just building rook c6. Let's see what he's up to. Look at that move again. G6, strengthening move. Let your king come up. Maybe if you move your d pawn, you don't have to worry about your knight. So just a strong move. Nice perch for your knight. Okay, I don't know what he's doing. There's nothing really. Oh, he's trying to play rook b1 maybe. No, it's not going to work anyway. Like I said, this is g4 is hanging. Once again, prophylactic moves. Let's say the queen starts checking. King g7, no check from c8. But at least white did figure that out and gets away from the back rank prospect. Okay, queen b4, and then you saw the minority attack coming. So why not? I mean, let's kind of sneak in there. Let's creep into their position. a5, a4. You can't do anything about it. You might get a3 in sometimes to cramp them further, but it's more, he figured it's more concrete to just take and create a target. If you know you're going to invade on c2 and try to win their a pawn, but he probably just didn't see the prospect of doing that. Now we have the trade, white covers second rank. So he's like, all right, let's do that. So again, white does have a passed pawn. Now remember, black's majority turned into it just to compare it. I didn't realize what a good comparison the two games are. But black has the queenside majority, which became a strength. It started with this. Remember that c pawn? Even the isolated c pawn scenarios we analyzed, we saw it was a strength, the passed pawn. Now here, in contrast, the white queenside, the b pawn, queenside majority becomes the b pawn, and that is the weakness. So it's really nice that you see the exceptions, and it's about when some theoretical concept favors one side or the other. So the passed pawn does not favor him. Now we have two, it's just viewed as two, we can view it as 2 isolated pawns. Okay, so he sneaks over here. The rook goes up, becomes a defender, defensive piece. Rook swings. G4 is played because he's got nothing better. But you take on passant. So currently you're still on f5. Got a little more time on f5. But this is very important also. You cover one square, you weaken another square. What are some, okay, let's look at the position now. Let's take stock of this. What are some weaknesses for white now? We still have we also have targets over here, but these are the main targets, d4, b3. But what are the weak squares now after this happened? Any weak squares that have been created for white? I'll just make X's. Whenever you guys see one, I'll make X's. So just shout them out when you see one. Any weak square that can't be guarded by a pawn or that's accessible to you.
Wouldn't the second the seventh rank or second rank be like weak squares since now
Yeah.
we can put our rook on that rank.
Right. It's in terms of accessibility. I mean, fundamentally, the second rank can't be guarded by any pawns. So actually the first and second ranks are fun. We talk about weaknesses, it's all about accessibility, right? So we talk about, for example, like give me a weakness that's on the third rank, right? Pretty much everything's weak, right? So for example, not a weakness. What's not a weakness? Okay, E5 is not a weakness. And it's in your territory anyway. I guess we can say to F4 is not a weakness. These are not weaknesses. So I make those check marks. I might make those should be check marks or something. But those are okay for white. But the other ones, they are like what, 6 squares they can control with the pawns or something. But literally 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7, right? But this first and second rank are weak. Third rank's weak, right? But notice that because G4 was played, H takes G3, F takes G3. What are the new weaknesses that white has just taken on?
I think E4 is a new weakness. So now there's no F pawn. So white could put is able to put a knight on E4.
Yeah, exactly. E4. So D4 itself, that square. Whatever. All again, this is all weak. But because of like I said, the last move G4, that weakens F3. Pawn takes pawn, pawn takes pawn, that weakens E3. These are already weak. B4. Those are all weaknesses on their side of the board, right? Yeah, that's about it. So everything on their side of the board is accessible except 1, 2, 5 squares. Out of how many? It would be 8 times 4. So out of 32, yeah, not much. So yeah, and then I mean you could do the math on your side as well. I mean, it's an open game. That's the thing about open game, not totally open. I mean, there are a lot of open lines, but obviously center's still locked. But the more pawns get traded, the more you have access to the opponent's position, right? So like you could say we have weaknesses too on our second rank, 7th rank, but they're not that accessible. But again, look at the number of squares that we do control. Just really quickly for contrast, to point out the contrast. We control, let's see, 1. We have the ability to control G5 with F6. Well, of course, we can G6, but we still have the ability. The more you control some squares, with pawn move, you give up other ones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, those ones are weak. We can control 6, 7. Hey, at least we have 7. That's better than 4. Is there anything else? No, but in their territory, we looked at that for them too. But interestingly, yeah, we control some of their territory too, like with our pawn. But yeah, hey, they have like, what do they have? 4, and we have 7. So that's still pretty good. But again, the main thing is it's about accessibility. And as you said, Malcolm, the first and second ranks are weak because they're accessible. Our 7th rank doesn't really matter, right? All right. Okay. Sounds great, Nicole. And we're probably not going to record for much longer anyway. So.
Okay. All right. See you next week.
See you next time. Take care.
Take care.
So, yeah, and there you go. Rook A2. So we understand though, it's very important to understand that H4 creates that softening. Rook A2, knight C3. Rook C2. Now Fisher, I mean, Stillman calls this cat and mousing. So kind of like going back and forth a little bit. But now it's he knows he can get kicked anyway. Let's maneuver the knight. He comes through the other way. Check. Hits this point. It's like, why are you letting the king up? Let's see. He's gonna check him anyway later on. Actually might be tactically problematic on F2. Okay, well there you go already. So what's going on here? Oh, 1 sec. Let's pause it for a second. Thinking about what white could have done. I mean, we see already, yeah, this is simply getting forked. Then he hits this point. But now we have 4 against 3. And we have that really nice pawn island against 2 again. And he still gets hit and totally tied down. It's just really beautiful technique at that point. But again, just like the other game, we kind of reach a point where we're pretty much just winning, right? With that extra pawn in the dominant position. But the question is, did Lasker, I'm sure this has been analyzed a lot. What if Lasker had simply gone here? Something must be wrong with this. But what? Oh, something very direct, really. It's kind of like the last game when we start playing like B3 and stuff, and you can't do anything. What's the very direct move that we have?
I think it might just be knight B4.
Right, that's the idea of the shift, right? The cool thing about the shift is you still hit D4 anyway. You know you're gonna get kicked with G4. It's like, fine, I'm gonna go over here now. This is the time to come this way. You don't do anything with the rook. Never got to challenge me on the C file. You're tied down, knight's tied down. So it's interesting. He let the king, he knew that the king was gonna get out from the back rank. He could have kept his rook on the second. He let him out of the back rank, but then the king becomes a target for tactics. Kind of gets in the way, right? So he guards D4, but does not truly guard it by tactical means. So yeah, knight B4. The rook has to guard. It's really similar to the other game. Look at this. When the rook was on B1, right? Because he was tied down to B2. This was, what year was this? 1909. So we got to kind of, use some of the same concepts. How many years? 20, wait, what was it? 13, 12 years later or something. All right. So we have take, and then we have this, right? So he's just totally tied down. So similar scenario here. Here he's winning a piece. Here he's just winning the pawn. But in both cases, critical positions. Actually, you know what? Funny enough, he says, wait, let's look at his commentary quickly. I think this is whose commentary. Yeah, his own notes. Check this out. So this is good. I sent the link. If you guys want to open it, look at it. Look at all that analysis. It must be taken from one of his books. So if we go to, he says something right around, well, last thing he said was knight D1. Where did he let the king up? He hasn't let it up yet. So it says knight D1. The alternative knight A4 was not any better. White's game is doomed. Okay, well, we'll have to figure that out as to why. So 97, we'll take your word. 93, well, we see it through the game. Rook C1, check 2, so we're here. Doesn't say anything yet about that. Knight D1, rook B1. Now he says, he's explaining why not knight B4. Only in that position that you talked about, Malcolm. When the king is more vulnerable, I suppose. Now, why not? Let's see. But that's the thing. You got to know why not, because a lot of people would just do it, right? It says not knight B4 because of this line. You can't click on it, but let's try to remember this. It says rook D2, rook B1. Wait. Oh, rook behind the pawn, right? So it says rook D2, rook B1, knight B2. And black could not win. So you try to remember it. Rook D2, rook B1, knight B2. Take knight D3 check. So rook D2. So it's saying not here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Rook D2, rook B1, knight B2. Oh, so right. This is talking about it's like, oh look, I have a tactic similar to the other one, but now I'm not getting a pawn. So I think it says he can't win. What was the last move? It's saying king E2, knight takes B2, king D2. Now let's see, why do you think he's saying that white cannot? Oh, that's not good at all, is it?
Yeah, the knight looks like it's trapped.
It's trapped, exactly. Wait, not only can he not win, could he lose? Now there you go. So if you get too ambitious, like, oh, look, I have a cool tactic. No, do the cool tactic when you get rid of the B pawn, right? Not now. He did it at the right time, but he knew that. That's very important because you can totally mess this up. And now the knight's trapped. Now I think white wins that, maybe. Now probably black holds because he goes like E5 and makes his opposing pass pawn. Maybe we'd have to go into that. But the point is, we'll take his word for it. But the point is, not. We're not going. We see he has that. We're not even going to think about giving that to him. But it just shows you how cautious you need to be till the very end. All right. So rook B1, king E2. Then we have this. But again, he just had nothing better because we were also threatening knight. Yeah, we had the dual threat of knight B4. That's going to happen anyway. So that's the thing. And then we just go here. We're like, okay, now interestingly, he does not trade. Usually they say knight and pawn endgame is similar to, or maybe even tantamount to a king and pawn endgame. But he just didn't. And of course, again, this is theory. This is generalizations. So in this position, it probably felt like I don't need that. And remember, it keeps pressure. Rook moves, you knight takes d4, knight f5 check, what? Rook check, you use that king g7. So very comfortable. Knight c3. Here we go again. Now he's inducing g4. Well, it's kind of a game. If you go g4, g4 is met by, I think, g5. Very crippled, right? It's crippled structure, rigid. Knight g6 is coming, then you can hop into h4 or probably f4. Hit the just too much. So he can try to push his majority, but first, why not try to win pawns, advance, win pawns? Then he might have a two pawn advantage, which I think he actually does. Knight check. So he's squeezing. There it is. Same thing, right? But look at that. So first he goes from f5 to b4. Now he goes from f5 to e4 or c4 or even b5. He's just running circles around him. Check, check, check. Game. This is game, basically. There's no defense. But look at the finesse. Again, Silman kind of talks about cat and mousing in this position. I'm not sure if you need to. But then Capablanca says the student should pay careful attention to his technique here, which is true. A little, confident about it, understandably. So check, check. Back. I think he says it. Let me see what move he says this time. He says two moves. He says all these moves have a meaning. The student should carefully study them. So he disagrees with Silman's cat and mousing. Well, unless that's the meaning. But that's kind of entailing that you go back and forth a bit to induce mistakes and stuff, kind of see where it goes. Maybe gain time on the clock, get to the next time control. But every move he says has a purpose. So that's in a couple moves, but just around here. So check, check, tempo, check. See, that's the thing. So he goes from, the question is, does that have a direct purpose? B2 repeats the position on A2. So somehow he prefers it on A2. Could be cat and mouse it, just to see where he goes. King G6, slight improvements. Nice and tight. Not committing to F5 or something. Actually, he has another idea in mind. King rerouting. So everything's nice and solid. Keeps away everything. He stops everything. No knight F3, E5 stuff. Nothing. The king goes to D6. And then I want you to find the final thing that he does to win. Rook D3. Well, just tied down again. Okay. So I think he resigns in two moves. I think it's two moves. So here, king D6. He's got nothing better than to wait. Okay. So pretty much we have optimal placement, right? Well, it's also, keep in mind, it's like Rook is on the second rank and far away from action. You don't need it's a long piece. So that makes sense. Just fun. He's just showing beautiful fundamentals, right? Knight's embedded. He has now that's permanent support point, not an artificial. Permanent support point, outpost on E4. D5 supports, D4 pawn's weak, H3 pawn's weak, king is cut off. So we have all these imbalances that lead to a winning position. Oh, and we're up a pawn. So how do we make a passed pawn? You could, like I said, you could play F5, but we have a stronger way. What's the best? I'm going to pause it for a second. So think about how to make a passed pawn.
I think the best way is just to keep marching the king and get the king to c4.
Oh, wait a second. Oh, you already did it anyway. I paused the screen share, but you already got it. Bring the king where?
To c4, like from c6, b5 to c4, because the rook there's not a good way for the rook to make any progress without
Right. You
like
can just
unnecessary forks.
Yeah. You can just maximize that king. I wonder, he didn't do that. Oh, maybe rook b3, but then like rook d2. I don't know. That probably wouldn't work. He went for another. Think about another way. I think that way works. So player's choice, right? I think it's just like, I don't even need to wander around with my king. I have a direct way to make a passed pawn. Now, I would like to win the d pawn, but again, he knows he has such a dominance position that he just determined that he didn't need to even try to come in with the king. I mean, not that way. He will come in with the king, but he didn't even need to try to win the pawn. Probably because maybe he can't win the pawn. Maybe it'd be harder, knight e2 or something. So what's the other thing you could do to make a passed pawn, guys? What do you think?
All right. I'll say e5.
Yeah, exactly.
Just-
Leia, what do you think? Does that look? I mean, I said exactly, but so I gave it away. But what do you think, Leia? Does that seem you have any commentary on it? The I mean, B5 is certainly natural, but what would you do here? Or why do you think E5 is strong enough? The final phase here. Well, he's going to resign in 2 moves.
Because if you play, I think E5 would be good because it would keep that pawn. No, it's not really a chain. It's more of a loop. I don't know. Anyway,
Which
it would
one? Oh
keep
yeah,
them
little, I call
together.
that a flying saucer. Yeah, the saucer.
Yeah, it would
Uh-huh.
keep them all together so they would remain in formation and not get broken up, as opposed to if you played like F5.
And you couldn't bring, and if you do that, like I said, I mean, even F5 might work, but it's farther away. Keep in mind, it's actually closer to their king, and E5 allows your king to invade. So, like Malcolm, that feed, yeah, again, that just bounces off your idea, Malcolm, of getting your king in. He just chooses again. I'm pretty sure you're winning. Might slow you down with Rook B3 or something, but then you go after the D pawn anyway. I don't know. It just seems like Rook B4 or something cuts off your king. Maybe he just saw some more of a hassle. Because if you know this works, you just do it. Oh, wait, we're not done yet. Check. See, that's cat and mousing. He did not need to do that, right? He might be gaining time on the clock, but look, it didn't change anything. He repeats the position. So it's check. But why not? Because you can, right? So wait a second. Rook D3. Oh no, it might be a Zugzwang because he repeats the position, but it's white's move, right? So here it's black's move. Check. Check here. Yeah, maybe he sees it. Oh, because by driving the rook to E3, it'll get hit by the E pawn / king. So probably, again, I don't know if it makes a huge difference, but that's the way he wants to do it, and it worked fine. So it worked masterfully. Oh, there you go, Malcolm. So he does that anyway, and then he resigns now. But it doesn't, yeah, oh, obviously king E5 gets hit with knight F3 check, and you have to go back. We don't need that. So king C5. And now if he goes knight F3, again, he's walking into the fork. So you can't get there. And then he resigns. Because he knows he can't do anything. If you play knight out, yeah, knight out, push. Can't trade knights, you're gonna win. Yeah, there's no way to stop. There's literally no way to stop it. What if you go here? I mean, you just push and you threaten to fork. What does he do? I'm just curious actually, how would we win it? King here. You might have stuff like knight G3 or knight C3. Well, how about this one? How about we get knight C3 in after here? Oh, wait a second. Check. King up, you fork him. That might work. So he has to go here. Oh, game over. Game over. You get the rook. So it's very similar to the other game, isn't it? It's funny. I mean, totally different looking, but when we extract the concepts, that's where we decode the position, right? You decode it, you extract these kind of sort of generalizations. But again, the generalizations are specific to the position. You have to know which generalization applies. But we get these concepts, and that's it. You guys have any thoughts about this one? Any final takeaways on this one?
I guess I like the use of the minority attack and learning how I heard of it before, but I never understood, like, I guess really understood it. So this definitely helped me understood like how how that would work in a game.
Yeah, it's awesome because I honestly, I didn't think of it beforehand, but they're like, wait, he has a minority attack in the second game, majority attack in effectively, we don't really call it, I mean, pawn majority, I don't want to say majority attack, I don't think in chess terminology, but effectively same idea, you're attacking with your majority, right? In that case, usually it's going to pass pawn. Minority attack, I would say multiple purposes, mainly you batter the pawns, you gain space no matter what. Gain space, batter pawns, maybe win pawns, and gain access. Like maybe a knight could come in. Like a classic idea is b4, b5, and you take c6 and b takes c6, and you have access to c5 like knight a4, c5. So you by trading off a pawn, you take away their ability to guard some squares over there. Right. So just trades. And then you have the b file, c file stuff. Yeah. Kind of like it would be the backward pawn game by Rubinstein. I think that would be yeah, that's definitely a minority attack going on. Or a queen, kind of you say queenside. It's a form of a queenside attack, but it could be on that's that scenario. It could be on the king side too, I suppose. In this case, that was the majority, but it wasn't the purpose like H4, H4. That didn't really, it wasn't directly about the majority. It was just squeezing. But then you saw really, I would call it, I think I'd consider it a central majority, even though we could say king side majority. The central, because you clearly saw by trading off the central pawn, his win was there. That's the final win based on his central majority. The minority attack led to the tying down with central pawn, queenside pawn, invasion on the A file. That was all part of the minority attack. Look, A pawn moved. That's his A file. And then the fact that he did this probing over here, that led to the rigidity, which meant that also that's another liability for white. Because if he ever abandons things with his knight, you might have a lateral attack, knight f2, rook a3. You pick off the H pawn, well, then the other pawn's going to go too, probably. You're just winning another pawn. You're up 3 for 1, easy win, right? Scottish. And then, of course, like I said, we're seeing how we get at these winning positions, how we arrive there, the method by which he gets there. Really, really cool methods, very clear. And then we have the technical phase. And again, usually people will show you an endgame position, but I think studying books like, I think both of these games are featured in Capablanca's Best Endings by Chernev. So I just remember reading that in a cafe once, just preparing for a tournament, picked up a lot of skills, kind of just remind me some things, pick up some skills, and remembering it's not just about what's in front of you, how do you get there? And then once it is in front of you and you have that near win, you got to prove it, don't let them escape, show proper technique, and that's all part of mastery. And then you just combine that with, your openings, your tactics, and yeah, you know how to attack the king. But besides that, everything else beyond attacking the king, that combined leads to mastery. So I guess we'll leave it at there. So I'll pause that. Nice job, guys.